Welcome to Taiwan Talks. I'm your host, Wenchi Yu. As Donald Trump prepares to take office, the world is watching his semiconductor policies. Today, we're joined by a special guest, Dr. Chenming Hu, who has many titles, among them UC Berkeley professor, National Medal Science and Technology recipient, as well as the father of 3D transistor, FinFET, which is coined and hailed as the revolutionary modern technology for semiconductors today. Welcome, Dr. Hu. Let's start with TSMC, where you were their first chief technology officer many years ago. It's also become one of the most talked about companies in the world. How do you think about its globalization strategy these days? Obviously, we know that it's set up 2 factories now in Arizona, one in Japan, the other in Germany, and maybe more coming. Do you think this is a good strategy for TSMC overall?
I think it's a good strategy. It's definitely going to be good for the stockholders. It's a rare opportunity that a company, gets the cooperation of so many localities, countries, and
governments, yes.
Even financing for you to expand. So that's going to be good for the business of TSMC, and I think for all the countries that are inviting TSMC to set up shops. It's a challenge for the Taiwan government, which always says they want TSMC to keep the roots here. It's going to be a challenge.
There was some debate in Taiwan when TSMC announced that it was going to set up factories in Arizona. There was this concern of hollowing out the most advanced technologies. And what's your thought, just knowing the company?
TSMC is a great company, so I'm sure they have thought through all the things they needed to do so that they could keep the R&D in Taiwan. And but Taiwan, it has limited resources, including educational and honestly population resource. So how can a huge company gets such a limited resources to do what it needs to do for the world? And that is going to be a great challenge for the management as well as for the Taiwan government.
But Morris Chang, the founder, has also said before that the success of TSMC is due to this special sort of almost like an ecosystem that was created in Taiwan. And so relocating or replicating that model may not be as easy in other locations. What do you think?
Now, I agree with him. I think TSMC will be wise to keep the successful operation in Taiwan, especially in R&D. I think Taiwan continues to hold some cost advantages. But once you have significant operation in countries like U.S., there will be continued attraction for you to bring, closer to your most advanced technology there.
And clients.
Clients, some clients will want that as well.
Yeah.
So there will be a lot of incentives to bring the U.S. operation almost up to par with Taiwan. And we will see how TSMC can manage what they want to do. I believe they want to keep the roots in Taiwan.
Yeah. Well, obviously, TSMC has been viewed as a silicon shield for Taiwan. I don't know how you personally think about this concept of silicon shield.
I don't have much thought about it, but I really like the way the former CEO, Mark Liu. He was the CEO of TSMC when this concept was first floated in the media, and he was more or less asked that question when he was interviewed on the 60 Minutes. Yes.
Yeah.
And I think he said that just right. He said, I'm paraphrasing, if China attacks Taiwan, it's not going to be because of TSMC. If China does not attack Taiwan, it's not going to be because of TSMC.
I want to mention Morris Chang famously said globalization is dead. And the success of, at least in the past, semiconductor industry is because of its global supply chain. And almost like every company plays a very unique role. And these days, because of geopolitics, it may be different. Do you think this will drive up the cost of producing semiconductors and then therefore maybe affecting how the world's, the cost of all the chips and as well as electronics?
Cost, I think it will. Semiconductor price has always been priced to be extremely attractive, extremely affordable. As a result, there are more applications, there are more demand, and now every one of us have dozens, if not hundreds, of chips on our person, so this the reason the cost can be kept so low is because it's a large competition. And there's many companies and, in fact, many countries pouring billions of dollars into every generation of technology. Because you phrase this question more about cost, and I believe you meant, of course, cost to the users, customers, exactly. Before Trump started the
trade war.
Yeah, the trade war, let's say. The general concern about in the semiconductor industry is that, wow, China will start a price war. It's going to totally drive down the cost of semiconductors, will kill the industry.
So many, right?
Because they were investing lots of money to develop that.
Right.
And if that had not been stopped by this trade war, then we would not be sitting here worried about the cost. So if you stop the globalization, of course there will be costs associated with it. The efficiency will be gone, the investment will be less, the competition will be less. Yes, that will favor some companies, including TSMC. Otherwise TSMC would face the very fierce competition from China as well. So yes, there will be impact on the cost, no question about it.
And it feels like more recently, especially because of AI, which will need very advanced chips to power AI, that there's even more demand for advanced semiconductor chips. So what is the future of this industry, this sector? You are the inventor of FinFET, which in my view prolonged the life of semiconductor chips. It keeps it shrinking and getting smaller and smaller. But how much smaller can the chips go?
It can be smaller, but cannot follow
Moore's law.
So-called Moore's law forever. We know that Moore's law is about doubling the number of chips
every 2 years.
Every 2 years.
Yes.
And it's just like how the human brain develops from the time in the embryo. The brain starts with one cell, and before long it's 2, then it's 4, then it's 8. But you cannot continue forever.
Yeah.
By the end of 1 year age, the child's brain is basically fully developed.
Right.
After that, it's all through learning, and you increase the capability. And his and her abilities just cannot be predicted. It can be immense, right?
So right now it's 2 nanometers, right? Is that the smallest?
Right.
Yes.
So So the point is that you cannot assume that the Moore's law can continue forever. So if we change what the Dr. Chen said about globalization is that you could say Moore's law is dead. And I'm not saying that because I think that would be misinterpreted by a lot of people. I'm really saying is that it's like human brain cannot grow forever, but you also don't need to grow forever because when it's get to a large enough scale, you have more structure in the brain, enough in brain, then you can have other ways to develop. It doesn't have to be bigger to be better. You can learn. You can do things differently. A coincidence, since the introduction of FinFET, because it showed that you could improve the speed so much, reduce the power consumption so much, that customers are willing to pay more per FinFET compared to the pre-generation, rather than the first 50 years or 60 years of the IC industry, where the customer always expected and demanded lower price per transistor than the previous generation. That is why transistors keep growing on the chip, but the chip price more or less stayed in the same order of magnitude. That's surprising. And this is in spite of the fact that each chip contains millions more transistors than decades ago. But the chip price did not increase by more than order of magnitude. It's always a few dollars a chip, right? Maybe $20 a chip. But once FinFET showed what you can do is not just through cost, but through the innovation, the better technology. You can improve the speed so much, reduce the power consumption and heat dissipation so much so that there are more things that can be done with the chip, including
AI.
Yeah, exactly. And therefore, the market can grow without just relying on Moore's law to cut cost. And I think that will be the way to think about semiconductors. Moore's law definitely will not continue long the way it's phrased now, that most people like you who have really looked at definition understand. But I think most people actually probably think Moore's law just about the industry, the technology continue to improve and grow. In that sense, it will definitely continue because it can do so much for the world.
Well, you also mentioned the power consumption. Your invention obviously helps reduce the reliance on the power, but with the boom of AI. And so it seems that the energy required to manufacture the chips in order to power AI is going up again. So is that going to pose a challenge to the world when it comes to energy and sustainability?
Not to the world, to Taiwan, yes.
Okay.
So, because you're asking about energy use to produce these chips, right? Useful as they are, but it does take energy to produce them. So, I think many viewers probably immediately think about, is chip manufacturing a problem for global warming, right? For the future of the world. So let me just address your question from that angle, right? Then we'll talk about Taiwan, right? Definitely chip manufacturing is not a burden on the global warming or going to make it worse. In fact, it's going to make it much better. We're going to really need more chips to deal with the challenge of global warming. I'll just ask you to think back to the COVID crisis time, right? Very quickly showed even what the chips could do at that time. We could already basically replace all automotive traffic all the airplane traffic, and people really didn't miss it quite really in their work, in their even study. It's not ideal, but it's manageable, right? Even with technology that time. In fact, even before the COVID, probably most people never even heard about Zoom, but it's already there waiting for its day. And so imagine if the global warming became much worse, and we're going to really cut out carbon-intensive industries. Do you think they would prefer to shut down TSMC or semiconductor industry, or they will want to just replace the traffic on the by car and replace the airplane traffic, right? So from the future of the world, from the global warming point of view, let's put this question aside. No, semiconductor industry is not a problem, it's a solution, all right? And fortunately, we have this because we're probably going to need more of it to deal with other problems global warming will bring. And semiconductor is the most power efficient way to really increase our humans' ability to solve problems by another order of magnitude. Who knows, we may need that if global warming really comes, at full force, and we fail to do enough.
So you're basically saying that more advanced chips will be able to power better technologies that will be more energy efficient to the world. I mean, we see EVs as an example, right?
That's the story of the high tech or the digital technology, right?
What about Taiwan?
Okay, so now return to your question, but think it from Taiwan point of view. Now, Taiwan is a small place, very limited resources, not just energy resources. I'm very concerned about its educational resource, the population resource, right?
But energy is.
But let's think about the energy. Yes,
it's a big tension.
Absolutely true. Yeah. Many different ways to look at this. A lot of the people are complaining that the semiconductor industry, led by TSMC, has already bought out all the green energies in Taiwan. So in other words, TSMC is doing, what it can based on the rule of the game now, right? That is, you should, invest in green energy, buy them, right? And give them the fund to build more. So TSMC is being criticized for doing too much, but it can afford to do it, of course, and that's the only thing they can do. So only the government can figure out from a national scale what's the answer to that, right? Even buying out all the green energy may not be enough to your question, even for TSMC, right? So, I personally think nuclear power is unavoidable. It's a necessary evil, but I know that's highly unpopular still, and may not come to pass. If not, then we'll have to see.
Right. Well, given Taiwan's advantage and leadership in this industry, but we also know that many other countries are trying to compete for the advantage, having that advantage, whether it's the government, Japan, even Vietnam, Malaysia, India, UAE, you can name it. All these countries are vying for the leadership as well. Do you think Taiwan can continue to lead on semiconductors?
I think the game is for it to lose, right? If it plays the right, it should be able to. You have already touched on the limitations. I have already mentioned there will be pressure for TSMC to move more and more of the operation overseas. So
in your view, it makes business sense for TSMC to expand globally?
Looking at a case of the U.S., I don't think TSMC even has a viable option, right? The the threat of the tariffs and all that, and
Right.
the request of the customers, and all those makes the decision make sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I want to ask you also about U.S. leadership on semiconductors, because we know that the CHIPS Act during the Biden administration was primarily trying to onshore or re-onshore U.S. capabilities in this industry. And the Biden administration used subsidies as the tool to do that. It's a rumor that Trump administration may not use subsidies, and they will use tax incentives maybe as a way, and then maybe tariffs. Do you think the U.S. can reclaim the leadership on semiconductors? I mean, we see the case of, I mentioned that because Intel's development recently has gotten a lot of people's attention. My question is, how much can the government do to help private companies be a leader in semiconductors?
I think incentives, probably would be a very effective way to do that. Yeah, and that probably is the least hurtful also. At least the target company gets some benefit.
Incentives, okay. And can we just also ask a question
Yes.
about NVIDIA and the Taiwanese gang? So I was at a recent talk that Jensen Huang gave in Washington, D.C., and he said when he was a teenager, his dream was to become a semiconductor engineer. What is this thing about Taiwanese and semiconductor engineers? Is this like a Taiwanese thing or something?
Definitely not, right? I think it's a matter of time. We're all about the age such that after we graduate from the university, in the case of Jensen, he actually attended university in the U.S., but it's still
And he's much
this age.
younger, like, the generation, that your generation was kind of the first generation that started this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And but so when we finished the university at in the U.S., it was the booming time for semiconductor. Yes, you are right that I'm kind of head of the pack of that generation.
Right.
So I was very lucky when I entered the University of California. It was just a year after Intel's founding, and 1969. So when Jensen and Isao Su graduated, semiconductor was a fast-growing industry. If you talk about the rate of annual growth, that was the time when the industry grows by 20% a year, right? But the base, of course, is low. You know very well how that's different today, although the rate is small, but the amount of the hundreds of billion dollars a year grows much bigger than that time. But that was the growing period. And being immigrant, we have no baggage, no family business to consider. So the choice is quite simple. It's the semiconductor. It's not like there are that many choices. And if I may expand on that theme a little bit, that actually, I think, explains a little bit of the success of Taiwan semiconductor foundry industry. The fact is, in Taiwan, companies are not like the U.S. or even the Japanese companies that are conglomerates. Yes, they could invest the same $1 billion into manufacturing semiconductor or into their banking division.
Yeah.
No, Intel does not have a banking division, but you see what I'm saying. But
Yeah.
GE did, and GE
Right.
was in semiconductor. People don't even remember that.
Right.
And semiconductor business is very cyclic. So yes, in good years you grow well. That's why we have this annual growth rate is very high. But in the down year, that's so painful. So after the CEO has suffered that one or at most two cycle, he wants to get out of it. So in some sense, and Taiwan Semiconductor, not only because Dr. Chen said we want to dedicate to this, but in fact, if you want the company to do something else, it probably cannot do. It doesn't have the expertise and does not have the structure to do that. And in some sense, I think the generation of the Taiwanese students or immigrants in the U.S. is somewhat like that, right? So we don't have any choices, and this is the growing field, so exciting. So we want to do it.
Seize the opportunity.
And yes, we also work hard,
Right.
and we are good at science, and we studied hard in school, so we got the right knowledge,
Right.
and we got that single-mindedness. So that's what it is.
Thank you so much for coming to Taiwan Plus today, talking to Taiwan Talks.